I remember that one situation with the job, with him convincing me to leave that job alone, was one of the earliest parts of just me realizing that I was in a abusive relationship. Kind of progressed from there. We struggle with money because when he's away, I can't spend any money because the bank account is his. It's a shared bank account, but it's his money. And he made it clear to me that was his money. That was the money that he worked at his job for. That was not to be touched. I did not have access to that bank account, even though my name was on that. I could call to get the balance, but they would send like a receipt of every call via email. So he would know every time I would call. We had a shared iPad. We didn't have a computer, so I was able to go in and check on a lot of stuff. He never learned to clear the history. That was how I found out a lot about the affairs. I started talking to a good friend of mine, and she was my saving grace through that. And we would be on the phone every day, and she got me through that time. I was alienated from my family, my friends, everything that I called home. A lot of people were upset at me for leaving, moving to Georgia. I did lose a lot of friends, and a lot of family also stopped speaking to me. They knew something that I did not know. Some of my family members knew about the affairs before I had known. Sometimes in the family dynamic, some people just rather just talk about you behind your back instead of saying it to your face and telling you what it is. You don't know how somebody's going to react or respond to them telling you, hey, your spouse is having an affair. I do get why someone might not speak up, but I just felt they were such a close relative to me that they should have disclosed that information to me instead of it actually ended up coming out in a falling out we had. They basically threw it in my face like, that's why your husband is being unfaithful. It wasn't like didn't know at that point. I was just more disturbed. You knew before I even got married to this person that they were unfaithful. Not to say that anybody is to blame for my decisions for marrying that person, but had I known then a lot of that information, then it would be like, maybe this is not the right decision. But, at the time, I thought that it was the right decision for me. We continue, and, I leave and, eventually they find out where I'm at and then convince me to come back. So it was just a lot of, back and forth. I did not have an income, but because he had a good income, we did not qualify for free school lunches. I had to make sure that he had money for my son, for him to make sure that he had money on his account or to make sure that he ate breakfast and that he packed a lunch and a snack. Some days, because again, he's controlling the money, I did not have the money to put it on his account. So there were some days where I went without eating so that I could send the food with him. And then I could also save the portion of that for my daughter, who is 1.5 at the time. There were some days where, man, those cabinets were bare. It had looked like we had just moved in. I kept that from my family for a very long time because I was ashamed, because I had convinced people that this was the right decision for me to make, that I was going to make this work. Because I did not want to be another statistic. Already being a statistic of being a young mother, I did not now want to fall into another stereotype and another statistic of now being a divorcee. I wanted to make it work by any means necessary. So I hid a lot of stuff from my family. I hid the fact that I was not eating. I hid the fact that we had no money. And a lot of times my phone would be cut off. And my phone bill was only about $55. Wasn't a lot, but I just did not have $50. I could not convince him to give me $50 unless, it was like kind of like worthwhile for him. Well, that's your phone bill. I'm not worried about you having a phone. Who do you need to talk to because you're at home all day? I had to convince him that I needed a phone because what if the school calls? What if the school bus breaks down and the bus can't get him? I don't have a car. I'm going to need to try to figure something out. I had to convince him, give me an allowance so that I could be able to pay my phone bill. I would get phone calls from the school saying, you need to pay this bill. He had breakfast today, he had lunch, and now he is now in the negative. And that's embarrassing. We were we were in a pretty good neighborhood. These people, they're judging you. Why are you not able to pay your bills? Everyone else is able to pay their bills. We know your husband works a good job. Are you just not paying? But little did they know the situation behind the closed doors, that I didn't have the money. I didn't have access to the money, and me having to remind him, I need $20 this week so that I can put it on his account. And it's like, all right, I'll get it for you. And then he would leave for a couple of days and I wouldn't have that $20. So, I'm making bread and butter sandwiches, having to send that to him and sending little packages of applesauces and the little small milks and things like that. So, it didn't take the school long to figure out what was going on. I got a phone call from a social worker from the school. She asked me the dynamics of the situation, and I'd let her know. I'm like, we're in here without any food. And that was hard to admit. That was the first time that I disclosed my situation to a stranger. And that was another major break in me putting the pieces together that this was an abusive situation. The social worker, she said, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. So they sent home an application for the free and reduced meals, for him to get the lunches, for him to receive breakfast. Because they weren't not going to feed him. They were going to feed him, but they were just going to keep adding on that tab. So he was in a negative. And the Home and School Association ended up paying the balance for me. And they had sent home some grocery cards from Publix and Kroger. Those were the neighborhood grocery stores where we live. They were a nice little chunk of change. So I was able to get the food in there. But then it started to creep into, now this is anger and animosity, because I'm having to tell people outside of this house what is going on. And this is embarrassing for me. To have these people judging me and to put me now in a category, labeling me. And now my hesitation towards him is now turning into hatred, because here you are eating McDonald's and, I'm eating butter rice and can't even afford a pack of chicken. I was forced to be a vegetarian in that time, so I'm eating canned goods. Not saying that anything is wrong with those things, but he's sitting in front of me eating McDonald's. And it got to the point where he started to use food as a punishment for me. He knows that I'm hungry. The kids need to eat. What he would do was he would take the kids out to eat, leave me home. So then kind of turned me against my kids almost, because, when your kids come home, you want to hear about their day. You want to hear how things went. But they're telling me all the wonderful things that they've eaten, that they've ate at the buffet. Here I am, hungry, starving. My stomach was touching my back. And that shaped the bad relationship that I had with food. And once I was able to start to get my own stuff, I would overindulge in food. I was food poor. He used that as another weapon against me. That made me start to think okay, I need to do something. It wasn't until the abuse started to shift towards the kids, then that was when I said, okay, I definitely need to make a plan to get out of here. As punishment, he would withhold things from my son, because my son is not biologically his son. So then he would start to treat my daughter differently, then he would treat my son in your face type of thing. This is not going to fly with me. So I started secretly applying for jobs. I started secretly practicing to get my driver's license. So at the church that we were in, they helped us a lot. There was only maybe one or two people who knew about the situation outside of the school counselor. The school knows the situation. But nobody from the church knew the situation. The lady who I had met, who had became my sister, I had started to tell her about some of these things. She would try to help me leave, but her husband just wasn't in agreement of separating a husband and wife. So now this was causing some issues in someone else's marriage. So I pulled back away from her because I never wanted to be the reason why someone's marriage was in turmoil. I did not want my marriage to become an issue for someone else. I started to not want to hang out with her, not want to do anything with her. And we did everything together. She had children my kids' age. She was the reason why we got out a lot because, she drove and she liked to drive all the time. We would take road trips often. And I pulled back from that. I stopped asking her to come and get me. I stopped asking to come over to her house, and she felt that. She didn't know why, but you could sense that she was upset. But I think she understood. She didn't question it, and she didn't push me either. Our relationship split. She moved on, but I was still stuck in that situation. So I had found another church, a closer church to where I lived, a church that would have been, I guess you could say walking distance, but not really walking distance. Nothing's walking distance in that area. I started saving up money to get cabs so that I could go to church. And when I went to church, I found my family there. When I say this church welcomed me with open arms, they did. Then that was when I met another group of women, and they also saved me in this situation. So I had met a woman who had these young kids, and she worked for the post office, but she did also work another job. So she needed a babysitter. One of the women in church, she told me, she said, well, you need to make your own money. What can you do inside of your home where you can earn some money so that you can save up to get up out of this situation? So I told her, I can cook, I can bake. And she said, okay, well, we'll start with that. You can make some cookies, you can make some cakes for the bake sales that they would have at the church. So I would do that, and I would sell the cookies, sell the cakes for the bake sales. They allowed me to keep that money. So that money was mine. Then she said, okay, what else can you do? So I said, well, I only just have time to be with my daughter at home. I said, I watch my daughter, I teach her, I read with her. She said, so can you babysit? I said, well, I don't really like that idea. And, I don't really want to be responsible for other kids. But she said, a lot of people, they're going to need babysitting, even if it's just before and after, or, even somebody to walk to the bus stop to get their kids and, walk them into the house so that they can get off of work. She said, this is something I really encourage you to do. So eventually, I did. And she allowed me to come to her home and use her computer and make up some flyers, pass them out at church. I passed them out in our neighborhood, just hung them up everywhere. And so I did end up getting, the kids, the lady from the church, her children. So I charged $10 a kid. So, per day. So $10 a day per kid. I was bringing about $50 to $100 a week. So then that allowed me to now be able to pay my phone bill, be able to get some food into the house. One of the ladies, she volunteered at a local food bank, and she said, I'm going to come and get you and you're going to come shopping. I said, well, I don't have any money. She said, no, not shopping like that. I work at a food bank and you're just going to come and pick out some things. So we get there, there's a line out the door, and I'm like, oh, I didn't pack anything for my daughter. She's like 1.5. So I didn't really pack anything for her, and I didn't expect to be here. So I've never been to a food bank before. I don't know what to expect at a food bank. So I'm waiting in line, and I'm, waiting for the lady to go and get set up. So she comes outside. She's looking for me. She's like, what are you doing out here? I'm like, I'm waiting in line. She's like, no, you're coming with me. So I go back there, and she's like, pick what you want. So I was able to get boxed food, canned food, refrigerated food, meats, and you were also able to pick out a dessert. So I picked out an angel food cake, and I thought that was so funny because I had never had angel food cake before. So I picked angel food cake, and then they said, okay, you can pick out 2 games. They had board games, and you can pick out a toy for each of your kids. You can either do a toy or a book. I had got icebreakers and Yeti in my spaghetti. I was able to make a nice dinner. And I remember making that dinner, and he came home from like one of his long shifts, and he raised his eyebrows. Can only imagine what his internal conversation was. Like, where did she get the money to buy this food? Me and the kids were sitting down at the dinner table, just eating dinner. So now you can almost see the power being drained from him, because now he can't hold this abuse of food over me, because he was thinking I'm going to get the kids and I'm going to take them out to eat. He ended up leaving. So, I have realized I can do this. I can definitely do this. It gave me the courage to be able to do this. And another one of the ladies from the church, she had took me grocery shopping, and because I still had money from the gift cards that I had gotten from the school, had the money from the babysitting money, and then the bake sale money. I had a little bit of money. She's like, oh, get what you need. So I remember getting like just a few things. I got like stuff for lunch so that I didn't have to worry about having to put money, because at this time, the application for the free school lunches, it takes a while for you to be approved. So somebody still needed to pay in the meantime. I was getting stuff for him to have lunch, for him to have breakfast, some quick things. And I was getting stuff for my daughter because she was transitioning into regular milk. So I had to get her a different milk that I had to get everybody. I remember having like maybe 6 or 7 things in my cart, and, meeting her at the front of the store. She looks at my cart and she's like, is that all you're getting? And I'm like, yeah, this is all I have money for. I need to save the other money because I have some things that I need to pay for. Need to save up so that I can get my permit. Need to save up so that I can get my driver's license. I also need to save up so that I can change my phone number. She's like, come on. So we went back, and so, she took me through each section. She's just like, get, enough for you to be able to have food for the week. So, she's like, well, I don't see any snacks in there. I'm thinking, we're struggling. Snacks is not a necessity now. So she's like, get a snack for the kids and, get a snack for you. She's like, you like chocolate? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, get you some chocolate. She's like, convincing me, like, hey, like, get this, we got you. Get what you want to get, not the things that you think that you can afford. So we get to the checkout, and she pays for my stuff. I didn't know what to say. I had the money to cover the groceries that I originally had in there, but now she's paying for my groceries. This is embarrassing. I'm a young adult, but I'm an adult. I have these 2 kids, and I have a husband who works a good paying job. And that was another point of embarrassment in my life. When we got home from grocery shopping, she still had to run her errands. We were like riding around with her. We got to the house, and she was helping me with the groceries. I get home, we get there, and she's helping me with the groceries, and open the door. Immediately as you come and turn that corner, he's sitting on the floor. This was another time where we had bare cabinets again. And he's sitting on the floor, and he has a McDonald's bag. He's tearing this McDonald's up. The look on his face when he sees me and he sees us coming in with the groceries. Where is she getting this money from? But then he sees the lady from church. She's helping me with the groceries. And I think now it clicked with her to the level of pettiness that was in his mindset, because no one else had seen this. They only heard me talking about it. And whether you decided to believe me or not, how dire the situation was, no one had physically saw it before. No one had been in the home before. So she sees him sitting in the middle of the floor, right in the middle of the floor. Like, you almost have to step over him to get to the kitchen. Just eating McDonald's, eating a burger, drinking a drink. I guess that he was thinking that I was going to be the person to come in and see him. Then that would upset me. He had not thought to think, well, they're out of the house, that I would be coming home with some groceries. He thought that I would be coming home with a bare stomach, hungry, and he has food for him and he has food for the kids, but he does not have food for me. You see the little Happy Meal sitting on the side of him, and has food in front of him for him. He doesn't have food for me. This was the first time that anyone else had seen this with their eyes, because you can see there is no other food. So you know that he purposely did not get any food for me. Her seeing this, she just walked right by him, set the food on the floor in the kitchen, set some of it in the refrigerator, set some of it on the counter. We kept making trips back back and forth from the car to the kitchen. I had to thank her for taking us grocery shopping, for coming to get us to hang out. And she gave me the biggest hug, as to say, I did not realize that this person was as bad as you said they were. This is how this hug translated to me, that she's saying this. She's saying this with this hug, because it was the biggest embrace. We're outside in the parking lot, and I broke down into tears hugging her, because it made me feel good that now someone else is seeing this. Someone else is seeing the situation that I am, and it is validating me to be able to say, I'm not crazy. This situation is truly happening, because now someone else can now place their eyes on it. So after that, they must have had a meeting with the other women at the church. And because that next Sunday, I just remember they all sitting me down like, okay, this is the plan. You're going to get your driver's license. You're going to do whatever it is that you need to do. What is your plan? How are you going to get out of this situation? They took turns with me. One person took me out to get the permit. So they were all taking shifts on whatever their day off or whatever their free time was. They were coming to pick me up and the kids. I got my permit. I was able to get my driver's license. They even involved their husbands in it. So one of the husband, she had to do something last minute on the day that my driver's license test was scheduled. So he had to take me. Like, he's a middle-aged man, and here I am. I needed to go on this driver's license test, and my daughter was with us. So he had to watch my daughter while I was out taking this driver's license test. I remember being nervous leaving my daughter with him, because he's like in his 40s or 50s having to chase around this little 2-year-old, or almost 3. We're in a crowded DMV. So I passed my driver's test, and I remember being excited that I had passed, and I went in to tell him, oh, I passed. So I'm expecting him be excited, and he's just like, okay, can we go now? He's just like, I don't care. I just got dragged into this. I just thought that was funny. When his wife found out, she made a big deal out of it. She was very excited for me. They were all excited for me. That same woman, she drove me to the airport. She drove me to the airport a couple times, but I remember when I finally left, when I finally got the courage to leave, because there were so many other things that happened in between that. Because once I did get my driver's license, now I could drive the car. So once I left through all of that, that lady, she drove me to the airport in the same car that I had got my driver's license in. Had I not been focused on God in that time, I do not think that I would have been able to get through that situation. Because had I not been in the church, I would not have had the help through that situation. All of those women that I met that helped me, they were all from church. I didn't know anybody going there. They were all connected with me through God. They were my sisters in Christ. They were my community. And I honestly could not say I could have done that without their help and without their belief in me, without covering me in prayer. In that time, I don't think I've ever prayed as much in my lifetime as I prayed in that 2 years to deliver me out of that situation. I asked God to deliver me from out of that situation, but I needed to change. Going back to seeking God's face instead of God's favor, because I had put myself in that situation. Here I was asking God to deliver me from that situation. I think God needed me to see that even though I got myself into this crazy mess, that it would not have been possible for me to survive that, for me to get through that, had it not been for God. God was in the midst of all of that. And there was a huge lesson learned there. And I vowed to myself that I would never let anyone get that kind of power over me again. My main thing was worrying about what others would think about my parenting, worrying about what others would think about me leaving my husband, because some people, they did have opinions about it. They thought that I should have stayed because at least you had a roof over your head. How can you say you're in an abusive relationship if he's not putting his hands on you? So what, he doesn't give you money? That's not a big deal. Without really going into the details with those people, it was a big deal. That relationship was not a healthy relationship, not for me, not for the children. Then we began to be toxic to each other. It was a lot of tit for tat after a while. In the beginning, it was me, trying to save face because I did not want to be a failure in yet another thing. I felt as though I was a failure because I was a teen mom, because my marriage was not working. And my marriage was not working because both parties were not equally trying to make it work. So it was either me trying to make it work or him trying to make it work, just because he did not want to have to pay for not having his children in his home or not having his wife in his home, because he knew that having us no longer there, that would cost him. You now have other expenses, maybe child support, maybe you have to pay alimony. So it was going to now cost him more money. Just going back, just in thinking about that whole situation where he tried to convince me that it would cost more money for me to get a job than it would for me to be a stay-at-home mom. Now, him not even being appreciative of me being a stay-at-home mom. Now that I was gone, now he realized that, okay, this is going to cost him. So instead of me just having a job and bringing some money into the household, maybe that would have even been a distraction from all of the infidelity. Because I'm too busy working. I'm too busy raising the kids to even focus on him and his infidelity. But because I did not have anything else other than him, he made it so that he was my world. I have more time to focus on you. I'm able to see all of the things that you are doing or not doing. It wasn't the fact that he was getting caught. It was just the fact that he just started to get better at hiding it. He started to get better at hiding it. He would do love bombing where he would buy nice things. None of those things meant anything to me because my mindset is already us being separated from here. And there was no coming back for me. There was no let's work on our marriage, because I knew that he was not 100% changed. He was still talking to other women. He was doing a lot of those things where he's trying to convince me on one hand that, hey, I'm a changed person. I'm not going to be like this. Then on the other hand, he can't stop doing those things because they're so embedded into his lifestyle. And he even said at one point that if this happens again, if you leave with the kids, I won't try to look for you. I won't try to do anything. That was a lie. Just another mind game just to try to get me to stay. But that was the best decision that I ever made, was to get out of that abusive relationship. It didn't take me until years later to realize that the reason why I welcomed that type of relationship was because I had been stuck in a codependency mindset. I needed someone to want me. I needed someone to need me. Working through therapy and seeing that none of that was healthy. Me trying to fluff myself up and make myself look nice and do all of these things to try to get someone to like me. I was placing my happiness in someone else because I was not happy. I was never happy. But it was just the fact that, hey, I had a husband. I was able to say that. I have the title, but I don't have the other things that come with it. I don't have the love, the respect, the integrity, the honesty, the trust, the understanding. I didn't have any of those things that should also go with a marriage. God was not in that marriage either, because there was a lot of things being said and done in that marriage that were not of God. I just wanted the marriage for all the wrong reasons because I just did not want to be a baby mom. So I forced my way into that marriage. And also, he wanted the idea of a family without the responsibility of a family. And I feel like a lot of men and women do that. Men get into a marriage because they want to be able to say they're married, but then they don't want that responsibility. They don't want to be a husband. They don't want to be a father. They don't want to have those responsibilities. They want to be able to come home and just have life happen to them. That's not how things go in a marriage. You have to be willing to sacrifice. You have to be willing to not go 50-50. You have to go 100-100. There can't be 50-50, because then there's going to be somebody at their best. Then you have to pour more of your 50-50. You have to be willing to give someone 100% of you for them to give you 100%. That is how you make it equal, not 50-50. It has to be 100-100. You have to have God in it. You have to pray together, worship together, make decisions together. You have to be saying in your head at all times, before I make this very important decision, let me first go to God, and then after I go to God, let me go to my spouse. And none of that was happening. No, we were both making decisions without the knowledge of the other one, knowing of the decisions that we're making. And that was not a healthy marriage. Once I got out of that, I did not learn my lesson in that. So it still took me years. That was 2013, once I finally left. I still did not take time to focus on me, my relationship with God. It was like, once God delivered me from that situation, I'm free. I'm like, oh, thanks, God. See you later. Then God had to sit me down again. Now here I am, 5 kids in, and now I'm having to relearn that lesson all over again, that I cannot be dependent on anyone else or on any other person. I needed to break that codependency relationship, because I had to break it within myself, not waiting for someone else to break it. Once you bring that back, and then if you're in a relationship with someone, they're looking at you like you've changed, when yes, I have changed, but I've stopped doing the things that do not bring me joy. So if they do not bring me joy because I was compromising, now that also causes strife and causes problem in a relationship. So if you're working on yourself and you're in the middle of a relationship, it can be challenging. I needed to do it because I needed to let my kids see me be the best me. I could not do that with all those unhealthy ideologies of what relationship was. I had to let go of those ideas that I had of relationships, because I did not have a healthy example to go off of. I did not have any idea of what a healthy relationship looked like. So again, I had to go back to the drawing board, to go to God and to go to therapy and to do some real self-reflection to find out what a healthy relationship was. And I learned that if you're in a healthy relationship, you will never feel like you're compromising. You will never feel like you're dimming down your light. And in my relationships, I felt like I was dimming down my light. I was making myself smaller so to not overshadow that person. But that was also me taking away from God. And you can't take away from God. So I had to make lifestyle changes. And I had to have that internal conversation with myself and say, who do you care about offending more? Do you care about offending people on earth, or do you care more about offending God? At first I could say, oh, I care more about offending God, but then I was still offending God because I was still compromising myself, my integrity, my spirituality, my relationship with God, because again, here I am doing things to satisfy someone else, making sure that someone else is happy, but then not checking in with God, not checking in with myself. I got into a depression, I got into a sadness. It dimmed my light again, to where I had to battle with, who am I as a person? I did not know who Dominique was.